Hi, welcome to RCSP Florida. I have the Sony FE 200 to 600mm f5.6 to 6.3G lens, but wanted to see if the FE 100 to 400mm f4.5 to 5.6 GM lens was just as good, using the 1.4x extender to give me 560mm. That's only 40mm less than the 200 to 600mm lens on the long end. I lose one stop of light with the extender, so it is now a 560mm f6.3 lens. I will tell you up front that I do not like using extenders. In my opinion, no matter how good they are, they still degrade your photos. I just wanted to see how much. I can say that the Sony 1.4x is very good, but still loses some quality. It is way better compared to some I have used. I was shooting the A7R4 for most of this test. I love the quality of this camera, but hate the noise it produces at higher ISOs. Even with bright sun, I ended up having to shoot at 800 ISO to keep my shutter speed up, and the camera produces quite a bit of noise at that ISO. I said in my review of the A7R4 that I would have returned this camera for strictly shooting stills if I didn't have Topaz Denoise AI and Topaz Sharpen AI. I kept the camera because it shoots great video. My A7R3 is not good for wildlife video that is constantly moving. It really struggles with focus and generally fails on moving subjects. Note, I did use the A7S III for the Osprey video shots to see how it compared. I show you on the screen all shots using the A7S III. Also, you need to know up front that all of these pictures were processed using Photoshop and Topaz Denoise AI and Sharpen AI. I really envy the landscape photographers because they can easily shoot at ISO 100 or below all day, but wildlife photographers can't. Shutter speed is everything in wildlife photography. I think wildlife photography is probably the hardest form of photography to master, along with sports photography, and I'm still working on it every day. So let's take a look at what I was able to capture. This first sequence of shots is of sandwich terns. I was able to capture quite a few flight shots. The terns are in full mating season, so a lot of shots are of their mating behavior. As you will see, the females can be bribed to mate. The males bring them fish to try and gain their favor. There's also quite a bit of discussion over the issue. Male terns with a fish in their mouth were a common sight. In this scene, I guess the fish wasn't big enough because she flies away. The males have a tough time mating without other males trying to horn in on the action. I guess this tern decided to give the couple some privacy and walked right in front of the shot. The male celebrates his success. This black skimmer runs right over the couple trying to mate. I guess he was getting even for the terns, interrupting their siesta time. Most of the skimmers were taking a nap. I think this female was telling the male that no fish, no mating. She keeps stepping sideways and eventually runs up into the flock of skimmers. This is a semi-palmated plover. As you can see from this shot, the shorebirds are back at Fort DeSoto Park for the spring migration. This starts the Osprey sequence of 1 still and 4 videos. The first still was shot with the A7R4, but all of the video was shot with the A7S3. On a small screen, you don't notice it that much, but on a 4K 27-inch monitor, this shot is changing focus slightly multiple times. I was on expanded spot and focused on the Osprey, but it seemed to keep going back and forth between the Osprey and the tree trunk. Not sure why that happened. The A7S3 seems to do that occasionally when shooting 120 frames per second. This is one of the man-made nesting platforms they have put up at Fort DeSoto. This clip was shot at 120 frames per second and it is being played back at 60 frames per second or at half speed. At first I thought there were only 2 ospreys on the nest, but in this clip you'll see there are 4, the adult male and female and 2 juveniles. You have to look closely to see the second juvenile raise up between the 2 adults. There is the back of the 4th osprey. I love brown pelicans, and here are a few shots I was able to capture. Look at this tiny spider on this flower. He is so small I almost didn't see him. The Gulf of Mexico was beautiful on this day. If you got tired of doing photography, you could always bring your sailboard and go sailboarding like this guy. I struggled all day with the wind shaking the camera and adding wind noise to my videos, even with a dead cat on the shotgun mic. Well, what do I think of the Sony 1.4X teleconverter? I can only say that my opinion about using a teleconverter has not changed. I would rather not use one if possible. The stills looked pretty good, but the video was not as good and had some trouble focusing. That could be my fault or the fact the extra glass and the extender made some kind of difference to the camera. I don't really know. Even though the stills were okay, I would rather carry the extra weight of the FE 200 to 600mm G lens than use a 1.4X teleconverter on the FE 100 to 400mm GM lens. The reason I love the FE 100 to 400mm GM lens is because of its close focusing distance. I can use it for close-up shots that I can't get with the 200 to 600mm lens. I can still do close-up photography with the 200 to 600, but it is more difficult because you have to get so far away from your subject for it to focus. I will still use the 1.4X teleconverter if I am out with the 100 to 400mm lens and need to get closer to get a special shot, but it will not normally be on my lens all the time. I prefer not to use teleconverters if possible. This is only my opinion, and you may think it is good enough. If you have watched my video channel for very long, you know I am a pixel peeper, and if the photo is not in almost perfect focus, it gets dumped. I'm a resolution freak and want to see every feather on the bird. Because of the narrow depth of field using long telephoto lenses, all of the birds may not be in perfect focus, but the eye must be. While the use of a teleconverter is not for me, you will have to make your own decision on whether it is good enough for you. Using the 61 megapixel A7R4, I can crop to about the same size image in post. If you remember the spider on the yellow flower that was zoomed way in at the start and zoomed out, that was with the teleconverter and it still looked pretty good, but I could not have done that with the A7S III with only 12 megapixels. It would have fallen apart. If you have a high megapixel camera like the A7R3, A7R4, or A1, using the teleconverter will work better than if you, say, have the A7 III or, say, A7S III with way less megapixels. You will notice that I didn't shoot any stills with the A7S III, only video. It is primarily a video camera. Well, that will do it for this video. I hope the information I provided helps you make a decision on whether to buy a teleconverter or not. If you are a pixel peeper like me, you may buy it for special occasions, but not to use all the time. If you're not, then it may work well enough for you to use all the time. I prefer carrying the 100 to 400mm lens over the 200 to 600mm lens, but not at the expense of any resolution. I'm not saying the Sony 1.4X teleconverter is no good, because it is a very good converter. I just prefer not to use a teleconverter at all if possible. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more of my videos, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen. I would really appreciate that. It will help me a lot with YouTube. If you want to be notified when I post a new video, please hit the bell button. Thanks for watching and have a great day. By the way, if you want to improve your photography, get off your couch and get out there and shoot. Stay safe.